Hi guys, so we're going to move on to the dogfighting section of our tutorial. We're going to start off with targeting. Hopefully you've watched the previous episode, which was to do with sort of the fundamentals of setting up the ship and movement. So here you can see Plasma Snake is sat just in front of me, and you can see that there's not a lot going on. I want to talk to you about first targeting and the sort of heads-up display. We're going to start with targeting. Now, I may or may not get blown up here because this is a public session, but as you can see on our HUD now, we've got these blue sort of chevrons, and when these chevrons appear, it means that your radar has picked up a ship of some description. Now, blue usually means friendly. Red obviously is some form of an aggressive ship, or who's become hostile through their actions. And then you have white, which is kind of like an unknown, neutral, kind of not sure what that is. You can also see here that on the Gladius specifically, there's a radar, and this will give you an idea as to where those ships are around you, with you being right in the middle. Okay, almost like a sonar. Now, you can see we've set our MFDs up the same way that we did in the previous episode, and what we're going to do now is look at how to target. So there's a few different options. 4 will target the nearest option, the nearest target. All right. So if we press 4, you can see Plasma Snake has been targeted, and you can see now in this MFD the different positions that his ship is in. He's moving around, and we're able to use that information to know which way to come at him if we wanted to. We can see the distance here, and we can see his EM and IR, so we know what range that he's lockable from. You can also see here, and you've probably heard at the beginning, the fact that he has a radar lock on us. This will be there whether it's him or someone else, but just someone is locking us. The next thing I want to talk about with regards to targeting, is the obvious bit. You can see when my crosshairs get close to him, this green square appears, and once he starts to move, you'll notice that another thing pops up. But whilst that is green, it means that my weapons should hit his ship, and I say should because that's not quite the case. Now, can you do me a favour and just buzz about a little bit for me? So you can see that is the lead pip, which basically means that if I'm in that box, it should be that if I'm aiming ahead of his movements, or his suggested movements, his hypothesized movements, and as long as I'm aiming at that box, I should hit, and it's green. Now, you noticed he went out of range there, and because he went out of range, I couldn't hit him. So now he's out of range, look, and my effective weapon range isn't long enough for me to actually hit him. The next thing I want to talk to you about is sub-targeting. Not many people know that you can do this, but I'll give you a demonstration. Now, he's 7k out from me, so not many people know that you can do this, but I've targeted him just by pressing T and aiming at him is another option, so I can choose what I'm aiming at just by looking at him. But if I press 8, you can see now down in this MFD, I have targeted specifically a part of his ship, and that's one of his main engines here. So it's on his, what looks like his left wing as he's flying towards me. It could be on the back, actually, back left. Yeah, but I can aim at that and I can actually damage that. And the lead pip has actually changed now to target that main engine. If I press it again, it'll cycle to his second engine, and just bounce between the two. Now, in these bigger ships, so for example a hammerhead or similar, I can start to target individual turrets, and I can target other components like the power plant, which would allow me to do specific damage to those specific areas of the ship and then help with disabling it. For ships that have their engines on their wings, you can target that as a weak spot, and then you can blow off one of their wings, and that's quite helpful. So I just wanted to explain that to you. To get out of targeting someone, you hold Alt and you press T. and now he's gone. So next I want to talk about speed management. Now if I bring Plasma Snake back up, you can see that we've got his distance here. So it says 1 kilometre. So he's 900 away from me. And then this second one is what's called the delta. Now the delta is the amalgamated speeds that we're both going, and then the net velocity. So to make that slightly less confusing, if I'm traveling towards him at 1,000 meters per second and he's traveling towards me at 1,000 meters per second, then you add those two speeds together and the net is 2,000 meters a second. So we are closing that gap at 2,000 meters a second. Now if I'm moving away from him at 1,000 and he's doing the same, then that's minus 2,000 meters a second, means we're moving away from each other. So that delta is really important, and you can see someone's practicing their orbit on me at the moment. But that delta is really important for knowing how fast we're coming together, and speed management is key. Now what I'm going to do in a second is I'm going to show you how most new fighters will try and merge when we first start the game. So this next manoeuvre is called a joust. I'm staying in coupled flight. I'm making sure that my speed limit, which is this little thing here, is maximum, which is what most people do, and I'm going to try and close the gap with Snake. And he's going to do the same, and too fast, we've blown past each other. So now I'm going to turn around again and I'm going to come at Snake, and he's 3 kilometers away from me. He's going to start to burn towards me as well. We're going to start to try and shoot. We've blown past each other again. Alright, now this is called jousting, alright, and it's what most people do when they're garbage. So if jousting isn't going to work, how do we close that gap? Well, when we were jousting then, you could see that we had 1,000 meters per second of speed coming towards each other, and that meant we just blew past each other. So within 3 seconds we were 3k away from each other. You can't fight like that. So what we need to do is something called merging, and to merge, what we do is we monitor that delta and we keep it as low as possible so that we can still come together, we can still initiate an orbit, and we're in control and we're able to monitor that. So to initiate a merge, I'm going to move into decoupled mode. You can still do this in coupled mode, as I showed you earlier, but we're not going to do that this time. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move towards Snake, and I'm going to keep an eye on that delta. I'm going to keep it into a controllable range, and watch the difference. So I feather my my delta to around 200. And then I'm now in full control. I'm going to initiate an orbit by moving to 45-degree angle on him, and I'm just going to rotate. Now I don't need, you can see we're moving away at the moment, and now I don't need to do anything because I'm in decoupled mode. So I just need to maintain my orbit here, and we can stay in this position for a while. Now I'm moving away from him, I can come back in, I'm just feathering my buttons, so I'm not holding anything down, I'm just keeping my pitch, and I'm maintaining that distance as best I can. So I can use my thrusters to back out to stay at 500, or I can push in, and I can use my boosters to roll in and try and get ahead of him. Now, if you notice, we're both trying to tilt to 45 degrees because that angle gives you all your thrusters, but also gives you the weapons facing forward as well. Now you can see he's starting to get away from me, so I can boost in, and I can come in, and I can make sure that by being on that 45, he's struggling to orbit me, but I've got my weapons on him, and I can use my spacebar and my control, because I'm at 45 degrees, to maintain this orbit. Okay, and that's the aim of a merge. When I want to disengage, I can just boost away and hopefully not hit the station. Okay, so I now want to show you something called 45s. Now we're going to use this strut as an example of this. Okay, so when you're, let's say I'm aiming at a target and that target is moving from left to right, and that is going to be this line here, this strut coming across here. Now by going up and down this, I'm only moving on the horizontal plane, all right? So I'm only moving on my y-axis, and the difficulty with that is that if we look when I do it, I've only got these little thrusters being used, all right, which is quite slow, and it makes my pitch quite unresponsive. If I turn to 45 degrees and I do the same, I've got much bigger thrusters now working to achieve that. All right, and it becomes a bit more responsive because I have my vertical thrusters operating as well. Okay, now it's a bit sloppy because I'm in third person view, but you get the drift. You get that visual. So 45s are effectively where I would move my mouse. I roll to 45 degrees at the target, and then I travel up the target, and then I'm going to roll to 45 degrees, and I come back up the target, and then I'm going to roll to 45 degrees the other way, and I'm going to come up the target, and then I'm going to roll again to 45 degrees. I'm going to work my way back down the target, and that's just practicing your 45s. And where that becomes more dynamic, for example, is when we start to orbit something. I mean, that's a bit big, but I start to orbit this guy at 45 degrees, and then you can start to see how I set up my orbit. Now I can take this orbit up, and I can keep my distance from him, but I can keep him locked in an orbit at 45 degrees, and I've got vertical thrusters that can help me with that. If I want to move closer, I move a bit more to the left. So if you can see, I'm not aiming at him anymore. That'll bring me closer, as you can see here, and that will have made PJ squirm a little bit, I'd imagine. And if I want to move further away, I can just back out using my my forward thrust, right, or at least my my retro thrusters. Another way of doing it is I can just boost into it. So I can boost into it, look away, and that'll bring me in closer. I can change direction, so we can start to move the other way. I'm using my vertical thrust here. You can see I've nearly passed out. I can start to move the opposite thrust other way around, and I'm just using my W and my S keys to manage that thrust. I'm just tapping whilst using the left key to get speed. All right, so that's the 45s, how to practice more dynamically. All right, and we can go the other way again. Okay, so what I'm going to show you next is a maneuver to get you into range with someone when they're firing at you, which is obviously the most vulnerable you're at is the time that you're trying to merge. Okay, now plasma is going to stay still to make this easier, and then after that we'll have a little dogfight where we put all this together. Okay, so I'll decouple. Plasma has been told to shoot me as soon as he can. First one I'm going to show you is just trying to fly and merge with someone that is in a straight line. All right, so I'm going to come up, I'm going to get my delta up, I'm going to manage my delta, I'm going to move to my 45 position, and I'm going to start to orbit him. Okay, and you can see I took a faceful there. The other thing to notice is that we're out of effective range now, so I've got to move into him. But you can see I'm getting an absolute faceful here as I'm trying to come in, and obviously I'm not shooting back at him, but I'm at the 1K point now, and I took the brunt of that on my shields. Okay, we're going to try it a different way. Okay, so this time I'm going to show you the corkscrew. So to do this, I'm going to initiate movement going forward. I'm going to start to roll, and then I'm going to initiate my vertical thrust with my spacebar, and I'll show you. And that should allow us to move in a corkscrew formation and come in on top of Snake. And as you can see, we're now on snake 6, and he couldn't have done much about it at that stage. And that's how that works. Alright guys, so hopefully, you know, those things that we've covered today will give you that kind of basic fundamental understanding of how this should look. What we'll do to sort of finish this lecture off is we'll now go in and we'll practice on each other with a couple of dogfights and practice those manoeuvres. So I will hand over to whoever is taking you in to do that now.